Good evening, everyone. This is Darrell Lamont Jenkins, Brian Powers, Christian Perez here for the Ida Vox Report. Want to welcome everybody here, and let's get this party started. And first, I want to say, in case you haven't noticed, just there's four of us here today, so I want to go right to the chase and just say, hello, Margaret Kimberley.
Hello. I'm just sharing. I'm letting everybody know we're on. How are you all? It's good to see you. Good to see you.
Didn't mean to take you out of the but yeah, I just want to say hi, everybody. Margaret Kimberley is from the Black Agenda Report, and we invited her on because there's a lot of stuff that was going on in today's world. And Margaret Kimberley has her finger on the pulse of all of it, a lot more than I do. She has a tendency. She doesn't know it until now, but I have been schooled by her so many times in the way that I'm looking at things, and I really do appreciate it. I mean, when I look on Facebook and I look at some of the stuff that she writes and that she comments on. And I get a different outlook because I have a tendency of being a little bit too liberal for my own good, even though I am by no means a liberal. But that's when I go to the Facebook feed, Margaret Kimberley's Facebook feed, and it just kind of like low key keeps me in check. So so welcome to the show. And and a lot of people, and by the way, Brian is here and everybody, and this is gonna be a good conversation because I think we're all gonna learn something today. We're all gonna learn a lot. I mean, we're just gonna basically enjoy each other's company for the most part, and we felt that it was important that we get back into the swing of things after 2 weeks of just going fufu kaka. So let us. So let me get to Christian and Brian. How y'all doing today?
Doing great. Looking forward to the week. Same old.
Doing good. Still dealing with the technical problems, living in the middle of nowhere, but other than that, I'm doing pretty good.
Excellent. And one of the so why don't we just cut right to it? I think people need to understand who have not been introduced to Margaret. I think it's time that we do, and most importantly, it's time to introduce everyone to the Black Agenda Report.
Yes.
So why don't we begin with who you are, where you come from, and what exactly is the Black Agenda Report, which, by the way, you can find on www.blackagendareport.com. Let's start right there because you're going to want to go there. You're going to want to check out a lot of news and information that you're not going to get. You hear the cliche. You're not going to get it anywhere else. It is about 1,000 times the case when it comes to the Black Agenda Report. So
thank you so much. Well, tomorrow, this is perfect timing because tomorrow, Wednesday is Black Agenda Report Day. So if you go to blackagendareport.com, you'll see our newest issue. It'll be up sometime in the morning, depending on how fast I work. Before noon, I'll just say that. And we have our Facebook page, and we're on Twitter, of course. And Black Agenda Report was founded 15 years ago. Of the three founders, sadly, I'm the only one still here. Bruce Dixon and Glenn Ford have both passed away. Glenn most recently, just a few months ago. And we say we provide news and analysis from a Black left perspective. And we say left, we mean left. We don't mean Democratic Party. We are all committed, anti-imperialists, struggling against neoliberalism. We are on the left and always with the Black point of view in mind. And we have a great group of contributors. We have new editorial team put together. Glenn did a lot of stuff himself, which is, not the best way to run things, although you can understand how that happens. He was the driving force behind Black Agenda Report. And he was, many times in the year he was ill for a couple of years, the last year of his life, he was in the hospital and I didn't know, but he would get the issue out with taking his laptop to the hospital with him. Wow. And there were times he was hospitalized. I didn't even realize it. And his last issue was just a week before he passed away. So he was a man who was dedicated to the struggles of Black people all over the world. And a great writer, a journalist, actually, since he was a kid. It's a funny thing. He grew up in New Jersey and Georgia. And his dad was a DJ in Columbus, Georgia. And he was on the radio as a kid. I mean, that's how he had this amazing voice and presence. And but he joined the Army, joined the military. He was a Vietnam era vet. And he worked for James Brown. He did all these, amazing things. But Mutual Black Network, he was a White House correspondent. He did all sorts of things. But he was a socialist. He was a red diaper baby, in fact. And you could tell from writing Black Agenda Report. So it is our goal to uphold that legacy with our commentary and reporting and book reviews and so on. I have a podcast with Danny Haifong. Sometimes the two of us are together. Black Agenda Report presents The Left Lens, which you can see on YouTube. And so I guess that's a quick summary of the story of Black Agenda Report.
And that's one of the things for me when it comes to Brother Ford that I became familiar with him through People's Organization for Progress, which is an organization based out of Newark, New Jersey, that I have worked with for, I would say about 30 years now. Pretty much 30 years. And in fact, they were I always considered them to be one of the founding organizations of One People's Project, because they were amongst those that were that participated in that rally in 2000. And
do some little piece.
Hold on a moment. Brian.
Sorry about me, all my kids.
What are those Powers kids up to? All those boys.
I didn't have a chance to mute before I came back.
But in any case,
frozen. I didn't hear what he was saying, but yes.
Oh,
Pop
you got that smile on his face. That's all you need to see.
Yeah, it's like the power, the Powers clan at work. But yes, Pop was. Larry Ham spoke very eloquently at Glenn's memorial service, which we had September 18th, which you can see on YouTube. You can see it on the Black Agenda Report Facebook page. So Glenn was a Jersey guy too, in addition to being an internationalist and so many other things. So yes, of course, he had a close relationship with Pop.
So that's how I became familiar with him, and it was I think one of the things that we should start out. I mean, y'all left. You was with another publication, leaving, and I apologize because
it was Black Commentator.
Black Commentator.
Glenn founded that, and there, people had differences, so we decided to do our own thing. And I started writing for Black Commentator in 2003. And I want to say something about being a writer. I was never a professional writer, didn't go to journalism school. Excuse me, I don't have any of those credentials people think you're supposed to have. I wrote a letter to Black Commentator, and Glenn said it was good. And I said, can I write something else? And he said yes. And he was very encouraging. So he was a mentor to me and to many other people. And just by sheer repetition, week after week, year after year, I honed my craft as a writer with him guiding me. And I point that out because I think it's important for people to know there are many people who have interests and knowledge and have a lot to say to other people. And it shouldn't matter what kind of education they have or if they were ever paid to write before. And as a result of Glenn's confidence in me and my persistence, I ended up becoming a published author and speaking to people like you. So I point that out to say that it's important for people to strive to do things they may not have done before and to get encouragement and help as they do it.
Well, that's why I would love to talk in particular about where did you come from? I mean, like you said, you're not you're like me. You didn't go to school for journalism or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the direction you ended up in. Where did you where do you get your start, your origin story, so to speak?
Well, I was actually born in Ohio. Both my parents were from Ohio.
Whereabouts?
And my father did a lot of different things in his life, had a lot of, so we moved around a lot, all that to say, but we settled in New York, just to make the story short, in the late 60s when I was in elementary school. I grew up in New Rochelle, New York, and went to Williams College. I majored in history. I had no idea what I was going to do with the history degree. I didn't think about it at all. But after I graduated, I worked a series of jobs. My first job, I worked at an insurance company. Then I worked for the city of New York. Then I worked for a couple of nonprofits, and I recently retired. Yay! So my time is my own. I retired from my day jobs, and like most people, you still have to work. I mean, there aren't many. Unfortunately, you should be able to make a living as a journalist, as a writer. But media consolidation, which we can thank Bill Clinton for, really, there used to be hundreds of media companies. Now there are like 6 major companies in the country. And everything we see and hear and watch comes from these gigantic corporations. And the media is, they're struggling. Even newspapers of renown, you have a paywall. You want to read an article, there's a paywall. I'm not going to say they shouldn't make any money, but it's that kind of thing where print media and broadcast, especially print media, are struggling. So unfortunately, it's difficult to make a living that way. And so like most other people who do the kinds of things I do, writing and activism, also had to have a living wage. And I've been fortunate to always have living wage jobs my whole life. And so I've been able to support myself as I also pursued these other interests.
Christian?
Yeah, I was going to say, Margaret, so was there a particular moment in your life? I know you studied history. So for those of us that do study history, we kind of know how the world tends to work. But was there an aha moment for you, a particular moment that radicalized you? Was it an event in your life? Was it something you saw on television?
I would say the radicalizing moment for me was the presidency being stolen from Al Gore. In 2020. And it was. They stole the state of Florida. They kept Black people from voting. And it was enough for Bush to squeak through in the Electoral College, and the Democrats took a dive. I always mention this because Trump lost. He just lost in 2020, but he insists he won. And, Al Gore and Hillary Clinton lost in the Electoral College and just said, okay, well, I lost. And that was it. But that was a radicalizing moment for me, that this man who, was the vice president, a white man, a former senator, all these things, all these credentials, and they just stole it from him. And now I can't say I was a radical at that point. I think the influence of Glenn and other people sharpened my understanding of history. And I understand that most of the history I was taught was wrong, were either lies of just outright lies being told or lies of omission. Yeah. And most of the things that have happened in the world have not happened the way we are taught in history books. But and I think just the condition that people are living under now. The other radicalizing thing for me was the invasion of Iraq. And well, it all happened in the early O's, the early 21st century.
It all counts as one.
September 11th, the invasion of Afghanistan, the invasion of Iraq, the way that was pushed through, the way that the corporate media gave Bush cover, the way that so many people just went along with it, the fact that the media were cheerleaders for the United States committing these many crimes and still are. So all of these things, and that's about the time too that I found out about Black Commentator, which I discovered on another website. What was it? BuzzFlash. I think it was BuzzFlash. It's a long time ago. I don't even know if it's here, but they aggregated from a lot of different websites, and they had something that interested me. And I was like, oh my God, what's this? Black Commentator. And and the rest is history. And people were blogging at that time. There's less blogging now because of social media, but people were able to express themselves. So it didn't matter that you weren't a professional journalist. You could report something. You could report your thoughts, your feelings, comment, anything you wanted. And I think that was key in encouraging me also to join in. And I said, well, everybody else is writing. Let me put my 2 cents in.
No, that's good. I always find that like war is one of the few bipartisan issues in this country. And then if you look at the media, particularly under Trump, nobody wanted anything to do with Trump. CNN, they like bashing Trump, and I'm okay with that, right? There was a minute there where I'm like, all right, CNN, watching them tee off on Trump, that's good. But the second he decided to send missiles somewhere, it was like everybody falls right in line. And the so-called liberal media falls right in line, MSNBC, CNN. And it's still frustrating to me because you'll go on social media, and today in 2021, you now have conservatives trying to claim that George W. Bush wasn't a real Republican. It's as if the entire war didn't happen. I was actually told that by somebody on social media. They're like, well, Bush wasn't a real Republican. I'm like, I don't know where you've been the past 20 years, pal. But
I don't know what that means even.
Yeah, I was like, I don't even know how to respond to that.
Though.
Really?
That's something I heard before.
Yeah,
that's something I heard before. Basically, whenever you talk about conservatives, they've always been this far gone. I mean, remember, they almost gave us Pat Buchanan, and then eventually they almost gave us Ron Paul. So Donald Trump was really a vehicle for something that seeds were there blooming for years, I mean, it's interesting too, because when you had spoken of how media was consolidated in the 90s under Clinton, it was funny because I was watching Bill Maher's old show. I hardly will ever watch a show now, but Joe Scarborough was on around the time that Time Warner merged with America Online. Mm-hmm. For you young people out there, America Online was the way we got online via our phone lines.
That's about 20 years ago now.
That's ancient history, but anyhow.
They used to give us CDs for free so we can install. And we had instant messenger that was kind of like texting on your computer. It was a new phenomenon to us, but they were the go-to way to get online for a lot of people, to the point that they was pretty much dominating and making money. They was making more money than some of the media outlets. So, Time Warner merged with America Online, and it was AOL Time Warner. And I remember Joe Scarborough on the day that happened said straight up that what we are seeing is a decentralization of information. We're able to get our information from more than one source thanks to the internet. And here we are, and you were just talking about people blogging now. We have this podcast, we have our podcast, we have our own media outlets that they'll probably just that they immediately write off as being some propaganda outlets for us and everything. But we had indie media in the early 90s, in the late 90s, and early aughts and all that. So there was something to what Joe Scarborough was saying at the time, but still, per the point you're making, there is still a hold that a lot of these long-standing major media outlets have that we haven't been able to breach yet. Where do you go how do you think we can do that? How do you think, what do you think is our next?
There's still monopolies. I mean, and this lack of regulation is horrible. They should be regulated. These media platforms should be regulated as public utilities. Phone companies, phone lines, that's regulated. There's all kinds of regulation that they have managed to escape because they're billionaires and they control everything. But AOL was the first monopoly. And yes, it's true. Only people of a certain age know that everybody in the early days, everybody's email address ended with @AOL.com. And this merger was actually ended up being a disaster. Then it was the cable companies, and then everybody's email address was at Comcast, at Time Warner, at Roadrunner, whatever. And then it was at Gmail. But all these new platforms came up, but they are all capitalist structures. It's all corporate media. We still have these monopolies. So it's true. Anybody anywhere in the world can go online. You can use StreamYard like we're using, or go on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook and say what they want, but to a point. They will throttle you. They'll make sure that you aren't heard. People are, what is it? It's not ghosted. It's, what do you call it when you think you find out people can't read what you, anyway, never mind.
I muted.
No. Anyway.
But incidentally, no, I was going to say, incidentally, it's funny because Joe Scarborough is now on MS, as in Microsoft, NBC.
Exactly. And who owns NBC? I think Comcast, but for a while,
General Electric.
Subsidiary of General Electric, which was a defense contractor. So when the Iraq War, the run up to the war, Phil Donahue was hosting a show. He actually had the best ratings of anybody on MSNBC. But when he allowed anti-war voices to appear, they fired him. They just got rid of him. So we don't really have that freedom. YouTube recently decided that they won't allow anyone to share what they call misinformation about the COVID vaccines. Well, what's misinformation? Doctors don't agree about everything. Scientists, they don't agree about everything. So if someone says, vaccinated people can still catch COVID, which happens to be true, is that misinformation? What is misinformation? And how does YouTube decide what that is? But that's just an example. Twitter decided, it's about a year ago almost, the last presidential election, a news story broke about Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, his wastrel drug, addled son. And I'm not, going to, necessarily drag people with substance abuse problems, but most people with substance abuse problems don't have fathers who are vice presidents who can get them an $80,000 a month position on a Ukrainian gas company. And these emails, he, was such a, so high, he left his laptop at a repair shop and didn't even realize and forgot he had it or didn't care. Anyway, the guy turns it over to Rudy Giuliani, which I'm sorry he did. I think that ruined the story. So it came out that what people had said all along was true, that his father got him those positions, and he introduced his father to Ukrainians while his father was vice president. It was true. But Twitter decided that no one could share that story. That was true. And so Twitter and Facebook too, it was clear they wanted Joe Biden to win. So something which they claimed it was hacked, they claimed it could have been, I'll have to come back another time and talk about what a fraud Russiagate is, but it was true. And people should have been able to share it and say they agreed, say they disagreed, like it, not like it, ignore it, read it. But they said nobody's going to see it. And that's where we are now. And yesterday, we're talking the day after Facebook had this, Facebook always had these little outages, but this went on for how many hours? 6 or 7 hours?
About 6 hours. I don't know because I didn't care.
Yeah, it was most of the workday in the United States, but it turns out, I was reading today, Facebook is the de facto means of communication for millions of people all over the world. There are countries that don't have good internet and people communicate on Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp. And there are millions of people who could not communicate because Facebook was down. And that is a very, very dangerous position for us to be in. And Facebook, they also decide what you can and can't say. So Palestinian groups are regularly kicked off of Facebook. If the Israeli government tells them to kick them off, they will do it. So there, if you express certain opinions, they come up with a reason. People are booted off for, a certain number of days and have to wait to come back on, assuming they want to. But though all of these things are very, very bad, very negative, we cannot talk freely about everything. We do not all have access to media. They decide what narratives will be heard and which narratives will not be heard. And so even at this time where there's more media than I can recall in my life, we still cannot say that we have freedom of speech to use it as we wish.
Christian, looks like you want to say something right quick.
No, I was just going to say, this is the problem with corporate oversight, right? Like when we talk about free speech, like everyone likes the idea of free speech. And I don't want to see white supremacists on social media. But the problem is, it's not like you're not getting somebody with a social justice degree from Amherst who's sitting there going through comment sections. It's probably some Republican guy working at Facebook, if it's even a human being anyway.
If it even is a human being, yes, algorithms.
Yeah. And that's what it is. Like I will make a video, or it's happened to lots of people I know, and I know this is anecdotal, but I'm sure this has happened to our viewers. This has happened to some of us. Is you will post something calling out racism or bigotry, or say, look, this is what somebody else said, and this is why it's wrong, and then you'll get flagged for it.
Right.
There's not a human being involved in there, and if it is a human being, like I said, it's probably some Republican who's playing the both sides argument.
Well, or else what they do is Black people are regularly kicked off for that reason. If we call out someone's racism, we're the ones who get kicked off. So people speak in code. It's like, you can't use the word cracker to refer to a person. People have, little funny spellings. People do it with COVID because they have these annoying little banners that come up if you say anything about COVID. And whatever you think, whatever you feel about how it's been handled, it's annoying for Facebook to flag everything you say.
Especially when you're right.
What's that?
I said, especially when you're right? I'm not talking about human.
You can say anything. If the word shows up at all, the word vaccine shows up at all, you get this little, horrible little message. So no, we don't have the freedom to speak, but we have to use these platforms for as long as we are able to do so.
This brings me to.
Thank you. Somebody.
That was Leah. Thank you, Leah.
That's the term I was. Where you're not really banned, but nobody gets to see what you've written. It's called shadow banning, and it happens. I often hear from people, are you getting my, posts? Only one people, they go from having hundreds of readers to having, one or two. And that's never by coincidence.
Well, here's the thing. You just said a couple of minutes ago that that we have to use these platforms. And my question is, do we? We really, this is where I have to try to encourage people to recognize the power from within, so to speak. And all I can think of is the fact that we did have indie media. We did have our own blogs. When the right gets kicked off of Facebook and Twitter, they start Parler. Of course, they have the money to do so because they're capitalists. They
There's no
start
left-wing
They
billionaires.
start Twitter. I mean, they start something called Getter. That's the newest one, and Parler and things like that. And they mount insurrections at the Capitol and network through those outlets. And my attitude is, what strengths do we have within ourselves? I mean, Black Agenda Report is not exactly being financed by MSNBC or anything like that. But so that means that we're doing this. We can do independent things. And I think it's important that we do. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do this show,
Right.
Of course, we have to go through another corporation called StreamYard, but still. And we're broadcast on YouTube. So, but the thing is, we can do this. We can do this on our terms in some way. How do we build our strength? Because we can only complain, but for so long.
Right. Well, you raise a good point. We, you have to get away from the screen. You have to meet people in person. You have to be active the way people have been active for centuries. And there is too much reliance on electronic communication. You are right. But once that happened, once it came along, there was no going back, and we have to use it. Now, it doesn't keep us from doing the things that I just discussed. I mean, we saw it last year after George Floyd was murdered. There were millions of people demonstrating all over the world. So we can unplug ourselves and still do great things. We have to do that, but we can't be left out either. Once these mediums came along, it's like you can say about any number of things, we lived without cell phones or we lived without something, but once that thing happens, there's no turning back. And so you really can't. Can you live without a cell phone? Not really. You don't want to. So, these holdouts, that's kind of quaint, but, I don't think it's good for your life. It doesn't make any sense. So yes, we do have to use them, but with those caveats. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say one of the best examples of what happens when we go through ourselves to advance concerns, and notice that no one talks about this at all, to the point that no one even remembers this. Gina 6, all of a sudden you see tens of thousands of people converging on Gina, Louisiana, because they was about to railroad 6 brothers for they say assaulting a white guy, one of their white students. That wasn't something that they were reporting on the news at the time.
It was about 10 years ago, right?
I think it was longer.
2007.
It was 2000. It's been that long already.
Yeah. And it's funny because I remember when King Dowling was representing these brothers and sisters. King Dowling is with the National Lawyers Guild. And it was crazy because no one, when you're talking about the media, it wasn't like they were reporting on this. We were noticing that this was foul and we needed to take action. So we did it ourselves. And that's when the media came on board. Same thing with George Floyd. Floyd.
Around that time, I can't remember what year it was. It was like, what year was it? Million Man March.
Million Man March.
That was the 90s.
That was in 95.
So it was, I don't even know if internet was in. Did we have the internet at all? I mean, I don't know. Maybe the military had the internet. But
95. If 95,
no.
I was probably 12. So that's like me in 6th grade. So they might have. They
yeah.
might have, like, it was just coming out.
We can talk about these things that happened. I mean, that was, but I believe it was a waste because it was, about Farrakhan rather than you don't get 1 million people together. If you get 1 million people together to make a political demand, so it was a wasted effort. But people did it. People came from all over the country to be in Washington, and you're right. The media caught on. It was about the week it was going to happen, and suddenly you were hearing about it in the media. And obviously, there've been organizing going on everywhere in order for that event to take place. So I think you're absolutely right. It's important to remember that we still have that power, but there's no way to do what we do and not use the media. Now, it's a funny thing. I mentioned the Facebook outage yesterday, and I realized on a personal basis that I spend too much time on Facebook. And I didn't think I did, but I realized how often I just look at it. It's on my phone. It's like automatic. It's like, Pavlov's dog or something. And so today I've been thinking about how not to do that, how to use this platform to tell people that I'm, talking to you all tonight, or to tell people what's in the latest issue of Black Agenda Report without the time suck of answering. I mean, and it's, it's all there. It's entertainment, it's information, it's catch up with your friends. So it's easy to see the appeal of it. So today I decided, I posted a few times and I said, just post and get off. You don't have to post and then look for what other people said. Just do this differently. But it was a teachable moment for all of us as people about how we interact with these platforms, which can be very useful to us all. But I think we need to change our relationship with it. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is, I use it as well.
There
I mean,
was
I don't know
actually.
anybody that really... Oh, I'm sorry. No, sorry, Brian, you haven't said a word on, so you go on.
I'm sorry about the lag here. Well, it's been a little spotty here on the connection, but I will say that, it's been shown that, some of the social media, especially Instagram, Facebook did studies where it showed that it negatively impacts mental health, particularly of young women. And they basically ignored the studies, disbanded the team that did the study, and, did business as usual. So, I guess Margaret brought up regulation, and, when I think about like who runs our government and who runs corporate America, like who's going to regulate these people that we could even trust? I mean, like, honestly, Facebook saw a study that says teenage girls may be committing suicide because they're using their platform, and they said, and the government said, and everybody made money and reelected Joe Biden. So, I mean, it's hard to, I wonder, who do we trust to regulate this new?
Well, that's part of a larger, you make I can't use Instagram. I find it literally gives me a headache. I know there are people who use it a lot, but it's just sensory overload to me. So I literally cannot, I've signed up, I have an account. You can count on, one hand the number of times I've used it in the past year. Same thing with TikTok, which is,
that I can't do.
Platform. I said I'm not even that. I could get addicted to. So I said
I got into TikTok about 2 weeks ago, right? And I want to say like it's probably worse than Facebook, because Facebook has done a better job of, at least, and the algorithm in my life has pushed away a lot of the right-wing weirdos, but TikTok really, it's like an onslaught of just misinformation, right-wingers, bigotry, and so on and so forth. And you could do it all with a soundtrack. TikTok might be the worst of all of them.
Yeah,
I think in many respects, because let's face it, I mean, like you said, we do use these platforms. I think, as you've been pointing out, is that the reliance on them is what needs to be dealt with. This thing where because that's what they benefit from. And to Brian's point, that was testimony that was given to Congress today by a whistleblower who used to work at Facebook, who pointed out is that's how they get their revenue. They need people to come to the platforms and engage. And the longer that they engage on their platforms, the more revenue that they get. And they notice that people are engaged when they are engaging in hate and invectives and things like that, and anger.
Controversy creates cash.
Yep, controversy creates cash for them, chaos for the rest of us. And that's one of the reasons why people especially had a problem today when the whistleblower brought up Instagram and things like that, because Instagram is targeting teenage girls. And the hatred that comes from teenage girls and the body shaming that comes from teenage girls that you see on Instagram all the time, that's how they're making their money. We can basically say at some point we're going to have to do something about it. Now, do we want the government to do something about it? No, I'm not too sure if I can trust. I'm not too sure.
Assuming, as Brian pointed out, if they do the job of regulation we would want them to do, we have a bigger problem with the multiplicity of changes that we have to fight for. But we have to do it anyway. We have to do as best we can, and not leave ourselves open to being damaged personally by these platforms, which at the same time are beneficial. But these are trade-offs anyway. If in a equitable society, in a socialist society, China has an internet. They have Weibo, which is like, the Instagram for Chinese speaking people. So they have it, but the government also, they decided that kids need to cut back on their video game consumption. And people said they're not democratic and, communist China. Well, they had a point. I think it's not healthy. But I'm sorry, I'm rambling a bit now. We have this. This is the problem: is capitalism. The problem is corporate control of our lives. It is over our means of communication, of our food, of our everything. It's corporations that are ruining the environment. And I'm not going to tell people not to recycle or do any of the things that we know are harmful, but we're not putting a dent in things. It's these corporations all over the world that are warming the planet. So there's a lot to fight against. So, we should have community control of the police. We should have community control of the airwaves. We should have community control of so many things. And little by little by little, these things have changed. We had Reagan, who convinced millions of people that the government was bad. And then you had Democrats running for office trying to be Reagan. And so, the biggest sham is our electoral process. So it's like Bill Clinton wins. Hooray, it's a Democrat. Well, he's the one who got rid of the regulations in the media. There used to be rules. You couldn't have a TV station and a newspaper in the same city. Not anymore. So now there are only 6 major media companies. And so they get Democrats to do the things a Republican couldn't get away with doing. So it's quite a sham, the electoral process. So political action does not necessarily mean electoral activity. And, they convince us that vote. And I'm not saying you should not vote, but you come in, first of all, you come in after the deal has been done. I mean, look what they did. The Democrats did 2 elections in a row. They cheated Bernie Sanders. Then I think Trump cheated Hillary Clinton. They cheated him again. They picked Joe Biden. The fix was in. It was a fix. And so people thinking that, at the end of this process of the oligarchs deciding who they wanted to be the Democratic nominee, then they tell you to vote as if you had a choice in the matter. And our choice is Trump or Jim Crow Joe. I mean, Anyway, it's
Well, see, that's the point. See, that brings me right back to the kind of power that we have. I think about how often they try to say that if it wasn't for Jill Stein, Trump would have never been president. Just like they say, if it wasn't for Ralph Nader, Bush wouldn't have been president. And my attitude, I was thinking about this today. My attitude has been, it should have never been that close for either of them. What is it that has Trump being so close that he was able to prevail, or Bush being so close that he was able to prevail? Answer: the Democrats are not doing what they are supposed to be doing.
No, they can't. First of all, let me just say this. It's like, if the Democrats, why is another party responsible for getting votes for the Democrats? If they're so wonderful, why do they care what the Green Party? They wouldn't have to worry about it. So it's also an admission that they need people on the left to vote for their candidates. So if you need people who vote Green to vote for you, what would you do? I don't know. You might ask them what they'd like to see, and give them one thing they want. You get rid of, and Hillary Clinton was a horrible candidate. You let Bernie win. His little bit of reformism, if you're my age, and I'm 62, what Bernie Sanders says now is what all Democrats used to say, like 20, 30 years ago. They all sounded like that. It's not some, people act like he's so left wing. It's like, no, he isn't. But the Democratic Party has moved so far to the right that a little bit of reformism is treated like it's Marxism. I mean, it's ridiculous. However, I think had they had someone who spoke to the needs people had, that he could have gotten that. I mean, Hillary Clinton raised $1 billion and then couldn't get 78,000 more votes in the right places. I mean, that's absurd. But if you had someone who could have at least addressed some of the concerns that people have. So what do we have? Talk about a sham. Most people want Medicare for all, national health insurance.
Conservatives want
it. Most people want that. Even most Republicans want it. But we keep being told we can't have it. You can't raise the minimum wage.
We're being told we can't have it by people who are getting paid with courtesy of the system that we have right now.
Sure.
I have to jump in and I have to say I love, I saw this meme a couple months ago and it said Democratic Party caught off guard by winning election, right? The Democratic Party is the only party that wins elections and then doesn't know what to do once they've been elected. And I could say this about Hillary Clinton. Okay, maybe some Bernie fans didn't vote for her. Hillary Clinton could have just run a better campaign. Al Gore could have run a better campaign. My problem with Hillary Clinton is, I was telling this to my students today. I don't know if you remember, but she went on BET, and there was the one instance where she just pretended to just happen to have hot sauce in her purse. Or there was the time where she was doing the whip and the nay-nay because Black people are one-dimensional. They like to see you dance. Or my favorite was when this was on Twitter and it backfired. It was an attempt to reach out to Latino voters. And they wanted Latino. Yeah. # Hillary Clinton's just like my abuela. I'm like, my grandmother didn't even finish grade school. I'm like, you made it to college and then screwed everyone else over. But I mean, this for me is the problem is the Democrats want to point fingers. And it's like, you couldn't beat Donald Trump. Like Hillary Clinton. And I'll get slack for this, but we don't like Hillary Clinton, but she was qualified to be president. If you want to know what that means. And if you look at someone like Donald Trump, it's like, you should have never lost. And the only reason you lost is because you didn't run a good campaign. It was sloppy.
Well, she didn't even, I know people who live in Pennsylvania and they told me they didn't even see Hillary Clinton signs. They're like, we saw Donald Trump signs everywhere.
Everywhere.
What kind of campaign doesn't get signs out? Didn't feel the need to have a get out the vote effort because the algorithms told her she was going to win and she didn't have to worry about these swing states, which everybody knew. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, they are swing states. They are close. Democrats have to have. I remembered Obama had always had this amazing get out the vote effort.
Yeah. And
people saw through that. So after 2 terms of phony hope and change, people weren't excited anymore. and she couldn't even get 10,000 more votes in Michigan. Now, I'm sure some of those were stolen, but Democrats have to do a little more to keep that from happening. So now what are they doing? They're
If they
telling us,
want to.
yeah, well, that's
They want
true.
to.
Exactly. So now
I
we're
think-
told that Trump is such a fascist and the Republicans are such fascists and they're going to keep black people from voting and woe is me. And but
Fear.
how did they
Fear.
here? How did that happen? The Democrats lost 900 seats when Obama was president. They let
1,100.
those states go. All those states
1,100.
under Republican control. It didn't have to be 900 congressional seats, state legislative seats. All of it happened under Obama's watch. And they have never come clean about how their screw-ups put Trump in the White House, a man who is a failed businessman,
Failed everything.
who allowed people to think he's no real billionaire. Come on. He's richer than most people, but he's not a real billionaire.
His daddy gave him millions by the time he was like 14 years old. He never had to work. Like this is why I always tell people, if you look at him, he literally physically cannot stand up straight. And they have him on their flags as like Rambo. And it's like, how can you, like, he slurs, he doesn't speak in complete sentences. This is a slam dunk. But instead you run, Hillary Clinton and you turn.
Well, he was also a
victim.
celebrity. He was also a celebrity.
that's
For
the important part about it.
many celebrities usually win, lest we forget. And his TV show, The Apprentice, which most people I know were watching it. I was the only one who people like, have you watched The Apprentice? I'm like, no, I don't care about Donald Trump. I thought it was stupid. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it is stupid.
Gets to work for Donald Trump. What kind of prize is that?
I mean, they wouldn't even work.
With her, and she's a terrible politician. Most of her wounds were self-inflicted. The emails, the Secretary of State never used the State Department server. Why would you do that? Because you were hiding things, because you were still working with the Clinton Foundation, which is a slush fund. So all of these, it all caught up with her, and her, she started the speeches with Goldman Sachs and other banks. You do that after off. You do that when you're done. They all cash in when they're out of office. It's like, no, honey, you should have been building houses with Jimmy Carter or something like that.
She never came across, she's not one of the people. Right. Hillary Clinton is the rich girl who went to college, who became your boss. That's Hillary Clinton. She never like, I don't know, Barack Obama could at least put up this facade of struggle and whatnot. She was just always somebody of power who was conservative as a young woman. Yes. And it's just like, she's alienating. Exactly. She was a Goldwater girl in high school.
Yeah. Human love solidarity that Obama never took over the Democratic Party from the Clintons, and I think that's extraordinarily true. I mean, number one, they scared Joe Biden out of running for president the first time around. Everybody told Joe Biden, you don't run because Hillary's going to be the president.
It's Hillary's turn.
And if you remember, Obama had an organization, I can't remember the name of it, but which really was behind his first campaign. He could have taken that organization, turned it into a grassroots organization with
it was his campaign,
billions of dollars behind it. It
was his campaign.
Apparatus. He shut it down.
Yeah.
He turned
that was
off
part of
the
him
servers.
Winning.
He deleted his lists, and he let the corporate Democrats run the show. He had all the ability and potential in the world to move this country decades ahead progressively, and he shut it down and said,
I will add,
I'm going to do what the Clintons tell me to do. I'm going to be a placeholder.
Well, pay to play.
They are, speaking of Glenn Ford, during that in 2008, when he and Hillary Clinton were running for the nomination, Glenn Ford always said they were political twins. And he was the sharper of the two, the one who connected with people better, a better liar, actually. She's a terrible liar. So they were political twins, and they, how do you get to be president? Well, the oligarchs have to say you can be president. So of course you shut down something. There was this facade of progressive politics, but that was just to get people out to vote. But they, they didn't.
I will tell you, there is a there was a right-wing commentator by the name of Dennis Prager that some folks are familiar with.
It's on YouTube.
To give you an idea of how bad he is, he's one of those characters that quote unquote predicts civil war in this country. I think one of the most important things that I remember reading from him, and believe me, he's a total complete mess, you know. I mean, but one of the most important things that he has ever written was like a couple of years ago, he wrote a column. And it was a column, it was kind of like an open letter to liberals and centrists and such, encouraging them to join with him and folks on his side so that they can defeat their common enemy, the left. And my attitude when I saw that was, hey, he sees it. He sees it. I mean, I can't F with Dennis Prager, but quite frankly, he basically gave away the store as far as I'm concerned. When you hear people like former Pennsylvania Governor Ed Rendell saying that the Democrats will never be a progressive party, when you think about the fact that the alt-right basically got its feet wet in New York City back in the early 90s when these same characters that we're fighting today, including Donald Trump, were on the front lines fighting every black figure and group to try to keep David Dinkins from becoming mayor, and then just going after David Dinkins while he was mayor, and going after every black person, trying to Bell Curve came out of the 90s, courtesy of an organization called a senior fellow from an organization called the Manhattan Institute. What is the Manhattan Institute? Manhattan Institute was founded in 1977. And I know I'm going off on a rant right now, but this is important. They was founded in 1977 by former CIA director William Casey. And their mission was to undermine the goals and the gains of the civil rights movement, and to also relocate black people out of urban areas. Of course, that would mean into the suburbs where at the time, white people were still in control of. Now, what does that sound like? It sounds like the things that that people who talk about critical race theory are addressing. That is what critical race theory
let me
is all
say,
about.
let me
And
tell you, you know who got his start at the Manhattan Institute?
Huh?
Cory Booker.
What's that? I can say that again.
Cory Booker. He got his first start at the Manhattan. He spoke at the Manhattan Institute. I think he was a fellow at the Manhattan Institute.
Who's a charter school lobbyist.
That's right.
Took
That's
significant portions
He
of
got-
his rhetoric from the Manhattan Institute.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And now he's a senator he wanted to be president. Not sure that'll ever happen. And now he's this New Jersey. He was mayor of Newark. He is now a senator for the state of New Jersey, and he got his start at the Manhattan Institute. And it's opportunists like him who have been given cover by the same forces that you are referring to. But before we go, I want to. I'm so horrible at promoting my book. I should be holding it up, and now I can't find it.
Prejudential. Get it.
There it
Yes,
is.
Right.
yes,
That
that is
copy, folks.
Oh, I first of all, I gotta apologize to you because we really should have been talking about that book.
Okay,
is
there's so much to talk about. Prejudential: Black America and the Presidents was published last year. That's old for a book, a year in the past, and you can get it from, dare I say, Amazon, but you can, speaking of things we have
another example.
You can get it from Barnes and Noble. You can order it from your bookstore. You can order it directly from the publisher, Steerforth Press. That's steerforth.com. It's on Audible. I am reading it myself. So, and you can get it at your library too. So buy the book. It's a great book.
Yes, definitely it is. It is. I mean, remember what I was saying earlier about having to be checked? There were some things in there that I was just like, oh, yeah. And I'm glad you brought up that thing about Cory Booker, too, because there was another oh, yeah, for me.
Yep.
Because I actually did not know that about him being a part of the Manhattan Institute, and that actually hurts. Because even
And
regardless of what
we did an interview for those
better than that. But do you know what the Manhattan Institute is doing now? You know what the Manhattan Institute is doing now? They're the ones, curiously enough, that are pushing the anti-CRT agenda.
Of course they are.
They're the ones that are responsible, directly responsible, and they said so. Their senior fellow,
Rufo.
Chris Rufo, he said straight up that they was going to bastardize the term critical race theory. And it's interesting how they're doing it. They're doing it by saying that teaching Black history, teaching history, how we contributed to the history of this society, is critical race theory, and you should be afraid of it. They're killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah, sure, they're killing a lot of birds with one stone. They're killing public education. They are disappearing Black people. They're ginning up white people to be afraid of. I mean, critical race theory it's a theory. It's something academics discussed amongst themselves. People don't even know what it means, but it's being used to silence. It's being used to gin up opposition to anything that's vaguely liberal. They are taking control of the classroom. There are states that have made it illegal to teach critical race theory, which can mean anything. So if you teach my book, that can be illegal in some states. People are losing their jobs, or they're afraid of losing their jobs. So the little bit that Americans know is now going to be even less. It's critical race theory. It's like the Sharia law of 2021. Remember a couple years ago it was Sharia law.
Yeah.
People were like, they're gonna have Sharia, and I'm like, where?
Yeah.
Where do you
Barack
have
Obama was gonna bring us Sharia law.
It is now illegal in this country to make white people slightly uncomfortable.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. You don't pick fights with Black people that directly. We will beat them on this one. We will beat them. We will teach our history, whether they like it or not. I mean, we don't just complain. We fight, and baby, we fight dirty. So, so the truth of the matter. I mean, and this hits directly to me because history is really where I get my political ideas from. I mean, this is where my political interests from. My father was a history teacher, and if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for him having me sit and read the encyclopedia all night, I wouldn't be where I am today. And not just the World Book Encyclopedia, just the books that he would give me. I have some of these books. He was the one. Now, my father is not political whatsoever, but he was the one that hit me to the book Lies My Teacher Told Me.
Classic.
Great book. And James Lowen passed away recently.
Within the past year.
I didn't know that.
Lies My Teacher Told Me. Lies Throughout America. It's about history as taught through historical markers and so forth. That are all lies. I think he also wrote Sundown Towns. He was amazing. And there aren't too many like him.
Well, rest in peace. I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. So we're losing a lot of people.
It's interesting you should say that. I mean, that's it's the circle of life, right? As time goes on, it's funny talking about Glenn. He used to joke. He said, you're going to find, he's about 10 years older than I am. He said, when you turn 60, it's like, he said, you're in the dead zone, so many people passing. And we laughed about it. It was a joke, but it's absolutely true. So many people I know have had losses. People, Kevin Zeese passing away suddenly last year. Abdus Lukman dying a few months ago. These are people I knew and worked with, but people like James Lowen. But we have to do what we can to fill those gaps and continue the legacy of people who tell the truth in any way that they know how.
And before we do go, we mentioned Pop. We mentioned Pop, and I want to just hip everybody up to a march that they are planning. They're going to be marching from Montclair, New Jersey, starting on October 8th to whenever they get to Trenton. To whenever they get to Trenton. And basically their whole thing is they're going to be addressing a whole bunch of issues. Not the least of them police brutality and the disparities that are going on in our communities versus others. So if you want to learn more, it's going to be called the Long March for Justice. It's going to be a 67-mile march from Montclair to Trenton. March to Trenton for police accountability, social justice, economic progress. I'm sorry. You stop police brutality, police review boards with subpoena power, stop voter suppression, reparations for slavery, $15 an hour federal minimum wage, free college, and end student debt. If you want to learn more, you call 973-801-0001. And I just want to put that out there because we're going to be supporting it as much as we can. Hopefully, we could probably even do a show while they're on the march. That's going to be next week, so I'm going to be working on that one. But Sister Margaret, thank you.
Thank you all. It's good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, so good to see you again, Margaret. I missed you. I'm sorry I have some connection issues, but
that's okay.
You and me got to catch up on it. You and me got to have a video chat. We're long overdue. I do miss talking to you, but it was so great to hear from you again. And make sure, I want to plug you again to make sure everybody. I did the Audible version so I could hear Margaret read me her wonderful book, Prejudential. When's the next one? When's the next book? I mean, you're retired now, right?
God, that's a good question. The lack of gender report responsibilities are a bit of a surprise. So I always say it's my first book. I know I'm going to write another one, but I'm not sure when.
I hope so.
I hope so.
All. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
This won't be the last time you come here.
Daryl, if I could just plug real quick.
Do it to it.
Daryl, if I could just plug real quick, we brought up history, and I love history as much as anybody else. And tomorrow I'm going to be recording an interview with Nick Ramos. He does a podcast on the Cuban Revolution, and so we're going to be talking about Castro and how he rose to power. And if anybody gets a chance, he's not a comrade. He tends to have more Americanized views, but he's a great historian. And he's given me a few details about the Cuban Revolution that I didn't know, even after many, many years of looking at it. So I recommend you find the Cuban Revolution on Spotify or the other podcasts and join me probably later in the week. We're going to be interviewing Nick Ramos on the Revolutionary.
Very good.
What's the link? What's the link right quick?
Just make sure you like Revolution Radio's Facebook page or our YouTube channel or Twitter feed, and it'll be coming out. We're going to record it. It's not going to be a live taping. We're going to record it, edit the podcast, and put it out. So make sure you follow us on your social medias.
All right. Well,
thank you all.
Margaret, thank you for being here. Hope to see you again soon. I'm going to say goodbye. Brian, Christian, thank you for being here once again. We're going to be back here next week. If anybody wants to try to help out One People's Project, and we really do need some help right now. You can hit us up at onepeoplesproject.com and hit that donate button. You can also buy some merch there. You can also go to OPP, One People's Proj at One People's Proj on that social media network known as Twitter. And we also have IdaVox at IdaVox OPP. Yeah, I know we were down in social media, but it's there. We're gonna.
Well, as I said, it is. It's here. So good night, everybody.
Yeah, but don't relax.
Peace.
Take care, Margaret. Take care.
Bye bye. Peace out.
Take care. And y'all take care. We'll be back next week. Maybe we'll be on location. We'll see what happens during the march. Maybe we'll be out there. So, but we'll see what happens. We're gonna have to take it, play it by ear on that one. But I want to thank everybody for being on, watching us and listening to us today. And hopefully we will see you next week, regardless of what it is we're doing. Until then, this is Dynamite Jenkins saying peace. I think we have an issue, because usually when I say peace, and I'm on again. Let's play that outro once